start about the civil disobedience movement. What were the reasons behind to start the civil disobedience movement? How to launch the civil disobedience movement? First of all, the reason is that the Indians launched a powerful struggle against the Simon Commission. Great Depression made the life of the people highly miserable. Lahore and Meerut conspiracy case created discontent among the Indians. Lahore Congress session of 1929 declared Poorna Swaraj as its aim and declared to launch the civil disobedience movement. Gandhiji inaugurated the movement by breaking the salt law at Dandi. Now what happened on 31st January 1930? Gandhiji sent letter to Viceroy Irvine with 11 demands, asking the 11 demands. Some demands are specific demands, some are in general interest. These demands ranging from industrialists to peasants. But the most important demand to abolish the salt tax. Salt tax. Salt is something that consumed by the rich or poor people. And we can say that salt is the essential item in the food material. So the tax on salt and the government monopoly over its production, Mahatma Gandhi declared, revealed the most oppressive face of British rule. The civil disobedience movement was started with the Salt March by breaking the salt law. Now, Salt March, that is also called Salt Satyagraha, Gandhiji decided to inaugurate the civil disobedience movement by breaking the salt law. Gandhiji and his 78 followers started a march on foot from Sabarmati Ashram to Dandi, that is also called Dandi March. On 6 April 1919, they reached Dandi. Gandhiji prepared salt by using sea water, broke the salt law, and inaugurated the movement. The government imposed heavy tax on salt. Moreover, the production of salt was the monopoly of the government, so the prices of the salt was very high. Therefore, Gandhiji opposed the salt law. Mahatma Gandhi's letter was in a way as an ultimatum. If the demands were not fulfilled by 11 March, the letter stated, the Congress would launch a civil disobedience campaign. Now, Lord Irwin, unwilling to negotiate about these 11 demands, so Mahatma Gandhi started his famous Salt March, accompanied by 78 of his trusted followers, and the march was over 240 miles from Gandhiji's ashram in Sabarmati to the Gujarati coastal town of Dandi. The volunteers walked for 24 days, about 10 miles a day. Thousands came to hear Mahatma Gandhi wherever he stopped, and he told them what he meant by Swaraj and urged them to peacefully defy the British. Means whenever during this journey, whenever they stopped, they take rest, then the people come, and Mahatma Gandhi what teaching them the meaning of the Swaraj and how you can non-violently fight against the Britishers. On 6 April, he reached Dandi and ceremonially violated the law, manufacturing salt by boiling sea water. This marked the beginning of the civil disobedience movement. Now, there's another thing comes that how this movement different from the non-cooperation movement. Here is the differences between the non-cooperation movement and the civil disobedience movement. That in non-cooperation movement that started in 1921, due to the Rowlatt Act and the Jallianwala Bagh tragedy. But civil disobedience movement started in 1930 when the Gandhiji stated 11 demands in front of Lord Irwin. Second, Muslims participated in this movement in great numbers, but in civil disobedience movement, the response of the Muslims was lukewarm. Third, in this movement, people were asked not to cooperate with the British. And in civil disobedience movement, people not only refused to cooperate with the British but also broke colonial laws. Next, in non-cooperation movement, women did not participate in this movement on a large scale. And in civil disobedience movement, women participated in this movement in a large scale. They, along with Gandhiji, manufactured salt. They also played active role in picketing foreign clothes and liquor shops. Fifth one, the movement was withdrawn by Gandhiji in 1922 due to violent incident at Chori Chora. Next, the movement was withdrawn in 1931 when Gandhiji signed Gandhi-Irwin Pact. So these are the differences between the civil disobedience movement and non-cooperation movement. But the major difference is that in non-cooperation movement we only show not with the Britishers, but in civil disobedience movement we show non-cooperation but with the violating of the laws. In non-cooperation movement we do not violate the laws, but in civil disobedience movement we violate the laws, as the civil disobedience movement was started with the violating of the salt law. Next, here comes the main limitations of the civil disobedience movement. Dalits did not participate in the civil disobedience movement because the Congress did not give importance to their demands. Many Muslims did not participate in it. They thought that the Congress was moving close to the Hindu Mahasabha. Communal riots occurred in many places. Disunity between Hindus and Muslims started. Industrial workers' participation was minimum. Means that not all social groups were moved with the concept of Swaraj. One such group of the nation, that untouchables, who from around the 1930s had begun to call themselves Dalit or oppressed. For long, the Congress had ignored the Dalits for fear of offending the Sanatanis, the conservative high caste Hindus. But here Mahatma Gandhi declared that Swaraj would not come for 100 years. You understand? Swaraj would not come for 100 years if untouchability was not eliminated. It means when untouchability not removed from India, it almost take 100 years, not even the 100 years, to get the freedom. Mahatma Gandhiji called untouchables as Harijan. Some of the Muslim political organizations in India were also lukewarm in their responses to the civil disobedience movement. After the decline of the non-cooperation, that Khilafat movement, a large section of Muslims felt alienated from the Congress. From the mid 1920s, the Congress came to be more visibly associated with openly Hindu religious nationalist groups like the Hindu Mahasabha. As relations between Hindu and Muslims bad, each community organized religious processions with militant fervor, provoking Hindu-Muslim communal clashes and riots in various cities. Every riot deepened the distance between the two communities. Now the next comes that what was the efforts made by Gandhiji for the upliftment of Dalits. Gandhiji was against untouchability. He said that Swaraj would not come for 100 years if untouchability was not abolished. He called the untouchables Harijans or sons of God. He organized satyagraha to get temple entry and access to public wells, tanks, roads, and schools for Dalits. He cleaned Harijan colonies and his ashram there was no caste feelings. He asked the upper caste Hindus to give up the inhuman practice of untouchability. Next comes the Pune Pact, the pact between the Mahatma Gandhi and B.R. Ambedkar. When the British government conceded Ambedkar's demand, Gandhiji began a fast unto death. He believed that separate electorates for Dalits would slow down the process of their integration into society. Ambedkar ultimately accepted Gandhiji's position, and the result was the Pune Pact of September 1932. It gave the depressed classes, later to be known as the scheduled caste, reserved seats in provincial and central legislative councils, but they were to be voted in by the general electorate. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who organized the Dalits into the Depressed Classes Association in 1930, clashed with Mahatma Gandhi at the Second Round Table Conference by demanding separate electorates for Dalits. When the British government conceded Ambedkar's demand, Gandhiji began a fast unto death. He believed that the separate electorates for Dalits would slow down the process of their integration into society. And finally, what happened that a result came that in the face of Pune Pact of September 1932. So, for that, what happened that the seats were reserved for the scheduled caste. Next, here is the image of Bharat Mata that created by the Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay created the image of Bharat Mata. Abhinnath Tagore painted her image. Bharat Mata looked like a sannyasini. She is calm, divine, and spiritual. Devotion towards her become a proof of nationalism. Next, the national song Vande Mataram Sujlam Suflam Malyaj Shitlam Shashtashambilam Mataram शुभ्र ज्योत्स्ना पुलकित यामिनी फुल्ल कुस्मिता द्रुमदल शोभिनी सुहासिनी सुमधुर भाषिनी सुखदाम वरदाम मातरम. That national song was composed by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay in Sanskrit in his novel Anand Mat, and it was sung first time in 1896 in Indian National Congress session. Next, here is the journey of Indian national flag. First, Vande Mataram that you see here, unofficial flag of India in 1906. Next, the Berlin Committee flag first raised by the Bhikaji Cama in 1907. Second, the flag used during the Home Rule movement in 1917. Next, fourth one, the flag unofficially adopted in 1921. Next, the flag adopted in 1931. This flag was also the battle ensign of the Indian National Army. And the last, the present tricolor flag of India. Here we see the image of Bharat Mata, then our national song and the history of Indian national flag. Why these are given in the book? Because that these things are the feeling of nationalism, the nationalist feeling towards our nation. When we see these type of things like our national flag, our national song, the national anthem, and the portrait of Bharat Mata, then what we always feel very proud towards our nation and a feeling of nationalism created towards our country. So the conclusion is this, that a growing anger against the colonial government was thus bringing together various groups and classes of Indians into a common struggle for freedom in the first half of the 20th century. The Congress, under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, tried to channel people's grievances into organized movements for independence. Through such movements, the nationalists tried to force a national unity, but as we have seen, diverse groups and classes participated in these movements with varied aspirations and expectations. As their grievances were wide ranging, freedom from colonial rule also meant different things to different people. The Congress continuously attempted to resolve differences and ensure that the demands of one group did not alienate another. This is precisely why the unity within the movement often broke down. The high points of Congress activity and nationalist unity were followed by phases of disunity and inner conflict between groups. In other words, what was emerging was a nation with many voices wanting freedom from colonial rule.